What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. When I'm on the internet, I see a lot of myths going around, whether that's on YouTube, mountain biking groups, Instagram, whatever. And today, what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be diving in and taking on some of these myths head on to make sure that you don't spend money on your mountain bike when you don't need to. Let's get into it. Warning, this video includes opinions. Viewer discretion is advised. So myth number one is,
I need the widest tire that my bike can fit.
even I fell victim to this one when I first started riding. I thought that more tire automatically meant more traction, and although this may be true in some cases, it does come at a cost. Here's what I've learned. Paying attention to tread pattern and compound matters way more than width. For example, my last tire setup was a 2.6 wide Terravale Honcho setup, and now I'm running a 2.4 Vittoria Mazda front and rear. The Mazda setup is 10 times grippier than the 2.6 Terravales due to its knobs and its tire compound. Aside from this, wider tires are almost always heavier. And I know some of you may act like weight isn't important, but in every video that I ever post, especially reviews, people ask, what's the weight of the bike? So it matters to a lot of you, and it's something to consider when you worry about the widest possible tire. The last thing I would like to mention is that you leave no room to breathe between the tire and your chain stays or seat stays. So in the off chance that it picks up an obstacle like a rock, or any disturbance like that, there's really no space for those things to pass, and you can guarantee that it's going to tear up your frame. I've had it happen, and this was on that 2.6 wide setup because, again, when I was a beginner, I insisted on putting the fattest tire that I could. It's not necessary. It's a myth. Myth number two.
I need more travel.
And although in some cases more travel is beneficial, just because you want to hit a massive drop one day like drop the hammer in Bentonville, does not mean you need to have travel that is ready to take on those obstacles on the day-to-day. Let's face it, most of us don't have trails like that in our local area, and they tend to be more flat and more mundane and more tame. So I think that a short travel bike is more favorable in these conditions, and with modern suspension the way that they've developed, even if it's a 140 bike, even a 120 bike, a lot of these bikes can handle the massive drops nowadays. So the reason I say this is, if you go out to your local trails with this big, long, travel, wonky enduro bike and all your other buddies are on trail bikes, you're gonna get left behind because you're gonna be flopping around the corners, huffing and puffing because you got Mr. Long, Slack, and Low while everybody else has got a nimble bike and they are leaving you in the dust. So it's something to think about. Again, I fell victim to this one as well. I remember buying my Kona Process. It was a 160, 153 travel bike. Thing was an absolute tank. A beautiful bike, performs miraculously, but it was so heavy and so unnecessary for the trails in my local area that I ended up selling it. And another thing, the long travel bikes, because they have the tendency to correct the terrain so well, it can actually make tame trails completely boring. And you're mountain biking to have fun, right? So why would you want to make your trails boring? You know? So again, you need more travel is an absolute myth. Oh, this is one of my favorite. Myth number three.
I need 203 brake rotors front and rear.
Or whatever, now they make 220s.
I need 220s.
No, you don't. Bigger, again, does not always mean better. I've met a lot of mountain bikers, and many of them go absolutely bonkers when their brakes rub. The larger a rotor is, the easier it is for that rotor to get bopped out of true. And I know probably some of y'all are smiling right now because you're one of those riders that absolutely loses their mind when they're going down the trail and they hear that whick, 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 whick. If you have a 203 or a 220 rotor, I guarantee you those are gonna fall out of true way sooner. You lay that bike down on the side one time, it's happening. You're either gonna have to pull your wheel off and true that rotor, or you're just gonna have to deal with the noise. The most important one, honestly, is the fact that larger rotors are not gonna drive braking force like all of the other factors. If you want more braking force, you need to be focusing on your levers, your pad compound, your calipers. That's gonna make a much larger impact than just upsizing your rotor. So, for example, if you're running Shimano MT200s on a 203 rotor or Shimano XTRs on a 160 rotor, the XTRs are going to cream the MT200s. So again, put your focus where it matters. You don't have to have the biggest rotors. In my opinion, 180's front and rear has been adequate for every bike I've ever had. So it's just a thought. Save your money. Don't buy the rotors. Myth. Okay, so myth number 4 might actually it might actually ruffle some feathers here, but it doesn't matter to me. I see this all the time on the internet where people say,
that bike's bad because it doesn't have a through axle.
Please bear in mind that before through axle was a thing, people were running quick releases on all bikes for 20 plus years, so they can't be that bad. Now, yes, there are some truth to their sentiment, and that's the fact that when it comes to getting aftermarket wheels, you might struggle to find a set, but it's not impossible. Brands like Stans and DT Swiss make some phenomenal options for bikes that are still quick release. So my point is, if you're about to spend 1,000 of your hard-earned dollars on a bike that's quick release in the rear, don't let Joe Blow tell you that that bike's a piece of junk, because it's not, okay? Quick release is not that bad. It's not the best, but if it's what you can afford, there's nothing wrong with it, and it's not gonna hold you back on the trails. If you can extend yourself an extra 200, 300 bucks to get a through axle bike, you know, it will keep your options open to what products you can put on it and give you marginal gains in rigidity and stuff like that, and it'll keep Joe Blow off your case. But again, I don't believe that quick release bikes are bad. I've built quite a few of them, and they've never held me back, other than wheel selection, but I always found good wheels anyway, so argument's invalid. It's a myth. All right, last one. Oh, this is a good one. This is a really good one. Myth number 5 is,
if it's more expensive, it must be better for me.
I think everyone kind of falls into this rabbit hole. On paper, yes, that is probably the case when you're dealing with the more expensive products, but there's a few things you need to remember. One of which is the pros that you're seeing on social networks running these products are getting them for free, okay? We don't. We have to pay for them, and they're extremely expensive. So if you're on the trail and you're running, you know, shiny gold SRAM XX1 that you've been saving up for months, or that you had to take a loan out for, and you're scared to send it off of a jump because you don't want to chip the gold paint off the XX1 derailleur, then you probably had no business buying that group. What you should have done was bought GX, which performs identically. It will be a little bit heavier, but it's going to save you a lot of money in the long run. Because here's the thing, and this is my philosophy, and you can scream at me in the comments if you don't agree, because I know y'all are going to do it anyway. Your bike works for you. You don't work for your bike. So if you're taking your bike out to the trails and you have to consider, like,
should I do this because it might hurt my bike? Should I do this because if I break this part, I can't eat for a month?
Then you need to reassess what parts you have on your bike. So for me, for example, my last bike was a DaVinci Troy, one of the best bikes I've ever owned. It has mid-level Shimano components, SLX drivetrain. It is absolutely phenomenal. It shifts perfectly. It's not heavy. Of course it's heavier than XT or XTR, but it's not heavy. And here's the good part. If I break something on it, I can afford to replace it. And that's a good thing. So don't fall victim to this myth that you need to always buy the best of the best, which leads me to this statement. The ride shouldn't be the financial curse. Remember, the ride is the cure. So regardless of what bike you've got, regardless of whether it has through axles, quick releases, small rotors, big rotors, I don't care. Get on the trail, have some fun, and I'll see you next time.